everybody, and welcome to our much anticipated, much waited for spoiler review of Batman, the Caped Crusader, on a special episode of Geek Bites, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies.
Hey! All right, this series has been out for about a week here from Bruce Timm and executive producers J.J. Abrams, Matt Reeves, and Ed Brubaker. So quite a lot of people involved with this particular production of the first season, because they announced a season 2. This is a 10-episode season. We got so much in this one. Let me bring up some images for you all to take a look at. We got Batman here with Alfred. Hamish Linkletter is voicing Batman here. We had Harleen Quinzel here. We had quite a number of interesting characters be a part of this Batman Caped Crusader universe. Just we're going to break this thing down and talk about our overall thoughts and get into some of the specifics as well. This is a spoiler review, so you haven't watched the episodes, we'd encourage you to go back and watch them and come back and hang out. Or if you don't care and you have watched them, then keep hanging out. Michael, going to you first, man. What an interesting decision to come back with Bruce Timm back into the world of Batman. Of course, the late, great Kevin Conroy having passed recently. Hamish Linkletter now filling in for Conroy in this series. What did you feeling? What are your overall thoughts on this series, brother?
It was wild. I mean, much anticipated from everybody who grew up loving Batman the animated series. Like when we heard that Bruce Timm was going to come back and give us more Batman, I think everybody was really excited, and I think this show totally delivered on that. It was the weirdest feeling for me sitting and watching these episodes, because they are so close in visual style and in spirit to Batman the animated series that I felt, even more so than I did watching X-Men 97, like a kid who, like, it was like I unearthed Batman episodes that I had never seen before. Like, it just felt so much fun to watch, but also because we're in the era of animation that we're in right now, you know, Bruce Timm and his entire team, when they made the 90s Batman, they were inspired by detective noir stories, cop dramas, classic horror movies, but it all had to go through a filter of, this is on Fox Kids or Kids WB, and this is for kids. We're selling action figures. You've got to make it kid friendly. This was all of the same elements of inspiration without the need to make it just for kids. So it was a little harder, a little darker. The stories were a little bit more Hitchcockian, Universal monster movie. And I thoroughly loved the season. I mean, I think my only complaint, and this is a relatively minor one, would be the animation, which, again, super reminiscent of the 90s Batman series. I don't know if it was a budget thing or a production schedule thing, but the animation didn't fully feel like the style I loved. I love the visual style. I love the aesthetic of it. As far as the actual animation, the movement of the characters, the action animation, it didn't feel like it had been updated for 2024. Like when you watch X-Men 97, it feels like the 90s show, but they clearly spent a ton of money on it, and the action and the animation is really, really, like, they just go for it. Here, it literally felt like watching old school Batman. And that was great from a nostalgia standpoint, but I feel like the animation could have been, with keeping the exact same style, amped up just a little bit more. But again, tonally, story-wise, arc of it, does it feel like Batman? It ticked every box for me, with the one caveat being, I wish the animation had been a bit better.
Okay. All right. Shannon, your thoughts overall on the series here, this 10-episode series from Bruce Timm?
Super enjoyed it. I mean, you can really look at the way the world that Batman is in in that moment in the show, and it's almost like it could be a prequel to the animated series. I mean, this is where he's meeting Gordon for the first time. I thought it all worked really well. I definitely have my favorite episodes and my favorite characters. The only complaint that I would have had is it's only 10 episodes. And I feel like there are so many stories to tell in this kind of reworked version of Gotham City. I just wish we would have gotten more. And I think with a longer season, we could have blown out some more of those recurring arcs that were happening, like with Harley Quinn, like with Harvey Dent. Yeah, there were a handful of design choices that I wasn't the biggest fan of.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the series. And I mean, the big question came down to, is Hamish Linklater going to be a good Batman? And I think he definitely was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to talk about for sure. And we'll get to that when we get to the voice work and the acting work. But storyline wise, this is the thing that I want to start with. And Michael, going back to you here, did you like the overall stories that were laid out here? We had, of course, the Harvey Dent story and the relationship with him and Bruce Wayne. And this is a Harvey Dent that is kind of arrogant, kind of, maybe a little shady in some of the things that he does, but leading to when he becomes Two-Face in the last two episodes. Barbara Gordon in this, seeing her as a defense lawyer and what she's doing to try to clean up the streets or try to help people deal with some of the systemic issues in the Gotham Police Department. We have Flash there, a pretty corrupt cop, John DiMaggio voicing him. Got Gordon there, kind of the pressure from up top, him trying to feel this thing up. And then Thorne throughout the whole series being this ever-present pressure on everybody, slamming down here while Batman is trying to establish himself in the world. People are still not sure if he exists or doesn't exist, along with all these interesting villains that pop up throughout the whole series. So how did you think about the overall storylines here before we get into the specific characters?
I think they did a really great job of creating, like, every episode featured a new villain. So just like
Yes.
classic Batman the Animated Series, you kind of got your villain of the week episode,
Yeah.
but it was woven together with this really nice arc that was primarily the Harvey Dent arc, that led to sort of the two-part Harvey Dent finale. And I think thematically, they really created some, like, having Barbara Gordon be a defense attorney.
Yeah.
And having Jim Gordon be Jim Gordon, you automatically created sort of thematically over the course of the season this dynamic of our heroes, are villains redeemable or not? You know, do you give people a second chance or do you not? Which I think is sort of core to like Batman's entire ethos. I mean, Batman is the guy that, like, you know, doesn't kill no matter how bad his villains get. And there's this whole idea of that. And so you sort of, between Barbara and Jim Gordon and sort of the debates that they're having over the course of the season, that even lead into, especially when you get to the onomatopoeia episode, a discussion of Gotham itself. Is Gotham redeemable? Like, is it worth the fight? Which is kind of what Batman is all about. So Barbara and Jim Gordon kind of having this back and forth with Batman sort of in the middle of it, kind of learning to be Batman. And then at the same time, the other really great arc over the course of the season, even though it's not too heavy-handed, is Batman and Alfred.
Yes.
You know, Batman for the course of the season, as Shannon said, this is a younger Batman. He's starting to figure things out. He's working through how he's going to be Batman. And he's kind of, Alfred is necessary. He needs Alfred, but he's not necessarily listening to Alfred, who is very gently trying to be like, you have some trauma. You got to deal with your shit. And getting through the course of the season with the Gentleman Ghost and everything else that happens, like, you sort of see this sort of relationship with him and Alfred forming at the same time that Batman is slowly sort of learning to trust Jim Gordon, learning to trust Barbara. Like, he's been on this solitary journey and he's sort of finding the family that he needs to do what he needs to do. So just to Shannon's point, it works as a prequel to the animated series or the beginnings of any kind of Batman. Like, this had not the story, but just thematically, it felt very Batman Year One from a vibe standpoint. And I think that worked really, really well. And like I said, I think the changes they made with Barbara Gordon were really, really interesting and made her a much more dynamic character in Batman's world. And so in general, I thought that's what they did really nicely. Like, each episode gave us a really great A story with a villain. So whether it was Oswald the Cobblepot or Clayface or Firebug or whatever, like, each episode gave us this really kind of meaty Batman villain to sink our teeth into. But the overall story of Jim Gordon, Barbara Gordon, Bruce, Alfred, Renee Montoya, all sort of coming together and deciding if Gotham is worth saving or not. This is right up Matt Reeves' alley with kind of the story and the themes that he was hitting in his Batman. It's just core to who Batman is as a character. And so I thought, like, it really sort of doubled down on what to me, the things that you really want to deal with when you're dealing with Batman as a character.
Yeah, Shannon, your thoughts on the storylines here that we got, overarching storylines about the 10 episodes here.
Yeah, I mean the Batman Alfred. I mean that was sort of the one that ran underneath the whole 10 episodes, and it's, for me at least, this is a dynamic that I've not seen, at least on the screen, with Bruce and Alfred. I mean the fact that he refers to him as Pennyworth, that there is sort of this icy distance. Whether it's Nolan, how Michael Caine was very much an active and willing participant in Bruce's journey, or with Matt Reeves' movie with Andy Serkis, who's sort of begrudgingly going along with this. The dynamic that they presented in Caped Crusader was he wants to help, and he wants to help him more if Bruce would let him. And it's not so much that Alfred's concerned with cleaning up the streets of Gotham. He wants to make sure that this young guy doesn't get himself killed.
Yeah.
And so I thought that recurring story worked really well. I love the journey that Harvey Dent went on. I thought Diedrich Bader did a fantastic job with that. And I think with a longer episode count, because we got a little bit of a recurring thing with Harley, I think you could have done more with Harley. I so wish that there had been, again, in my head canon, I wish there had been a Dent Harley episode where Harley went to go see this therapist, and he's the one that Harley is finally like, ooh, this guy I don't trust. This is a bad guy. And you see the results of that after, he gets acid splashed in his face. But in terms of what we got with all the villains, I mean, 90%, I was a fan of the little changes that they made with the villains, and I thought it really worked for this world that they're constructing.
Yeah, I have to say I loved the storylines. I mean, as a guy who loves noir films and really engrossed in them, they're really kind of my favorite little niche of films from the 40s and 50s. I love the aspect and the way they captured that energy and that vibe. And yes, lean into some of the hard. I mean, people are getting killed here, shot to death, murdered. Like, you're seeing this in this series. So I like that they made it of its time period, but also made it topical, right? Because you got Harley Quinn kissing Montoya there at the restaurant. I'm like, okay, let's throw in. I love this. Let's throw in this lesbian aspect of it all. Then you've got a female penguin who is, everyone's overlooking her, but she's the one running this whole thing. I thought that was genius. And then you throw in the Harley Quinzel, which essentially you're like, well, okay, I know she's a villain, but she is kind of eating the rich, which I don't maybe necessarily have an issue with, but maybe she's going too far because of some of her tactics. And then the Harvey
Rocha's one step away from a Batman villain.
I mean,
days, guys.
more of a Batman anti-hero. But no, seeing where Harvey Dent goes as well, Michael might be right, with what he said, because I actually was okay with Harvey kicking the shit out of people and using the gun and stomping on them and whatever, because these are bad guys. But then I had to take a look at that, because at the end, him sacrificing himself, I thought was a great move. So that arc of him turning into a Harvey Dent that you kind of feel sympathy for, but also maybe cheer for a little bit, but then are like, whoa, horrified by how far he's willing to go. I thought it was a great journey to take us on, and with the viewer, but also the Barbara Gordon stuff. That was really fun to see. She was challenging in that, hey, her fight with her dad there at that house, I thought was a great back and forth, because you clearly have two very strong-willed people who have respect for each other, but see it from two different points of views. But even she's not beyond getting called out when Montoya says, oh yeah, because you left the city, you're hanging out with the riches, you don't know what it's like with the real Gotham, you went out in the suburbs. And I like that it's two women of color having this conversation about class and about judgment and elitism. So to me, there was so much that was fun to explore, that felt topical, yet felt very much from that time period, people having those conversations. Because too many people think that the 1940s movies are dated when they're having the same conversations we're having now in 2024 in our film. So yeah.
Well, and to your point, I mean, I think this is where what they did was so smart, and they didn't do it so heavy-handed. Like, this is a fun show. It's got fun, colorful villains. 100%. Batman's fighting people. It's exciting, and Christopher Nolan really dealt with this in his movies. Matt Reeves deals with this, that like inherently in Batman, more so than Superman, more so than almost any other hero, Gotham City is a character in and of itself.
Yeah.
Gotham City is a character in this show. And Gotham City being the corrupt cesspool that it
Yes.
is not just this is the slums.
Right.
Gotham City is a cesspool because there are super, super rich people, some bad, some just super rich, that are living their life.
Yeah.
And then there's everybody else. And there's not a lot of middle class. There's like the super rich and there's the lower class. It's kind of what's happening in America right now.
That's my point. Yeah.
And so like to your point, like not getting heavy-handed with it, but the reason that Renee Montoya, Barbara Gordon conversation happens about, well, you lived out here in the burbs.
Yeah.
You weren't stuck in the city. You went and did this. And she was like, hey, that's not fair. I wasn't super rich. We were living with my grandparents, and now we're back in the city trying to make a difference. Like all of these ideas are inherently a part of people trying to change a system that is inherently not working, primarily because of financial issues. And that is what creates these villains who all have needs and wants and are like trying to make their lives whatever they want to make their lives to be. So like that's getting really heavy-handed for an animated series about a guy that wears like Batman pajamas, but that's sort of what makes this feel more than just, oh, here's another Batman retread. Like there's a lot of these issues just under the surface that are making it, like Harley Quinn, to your point, everything they did with her that, you know, I think it was a big, bold move for them. Harley Quinn is arguably one of the most not even arguably, she is one of the most popular characters that DC has.
Yeah.
And to take her and do something so drastically different, but really interesting with her, I'm just preying on these corrupt, rich white people who are doing horrible things, and I'm going to punish them. You're like, all right, well, like, no.
Yeah. And then I'm also a strong supporter of women, because she is such a big fan of Barbara. They have a good, strong friendship, and then her and Montoya. And I thought that was a nice, like, she's doing this on one side, but also on this other side, although she's hiding it from them, she's very supportive and friendly, and a good friend to have in this situation as well. Let's swing over to the voices. Shannon, you kind of touched on it, so I'll go to you first here on this. Hamish Linklater is Batman, the great Jason Watkins, who, if you watch any BBC stuff, Jason is such a great, great actor to discover. McDonald and Dodds, if you're not watching that series, he's so good in that. Commissioner James Gordon is Eric Morgan Stewart. Renee Montoya, Michelle C. Bonilla. Barbara Gordon was Crystal Joy Brown. Harvey Bullock, was John DiMaggio, the great John DiMaggio. Gary Anthony Williams, I thought, did a great job with Flash there and turning Flash black and having him be that aspect of it all. I thought was really smart. Diedrich Bader coming back to another Batman project with playing Two-Face. Cedric Yarborough, I could not believe that was Cedric Yarborough as Rupert Thorne. I thought was great. Jamie Chung as Harley and Quinn. Lucius Fox was Bumper Robinson. James Arnold Taylor as Marcus Driver. And then, of course, when you jump into the villains here, Minnie Driver as Oswalda Cobblepot. You have Catwoman as Selena Kyle, played by Christina Ricci. There, Tom Kenny, Mr. SpongeBob himself, coming in here as Firebug. Toby Stevens as the Gentleman Ghost. Reed Scott from Veep fame as Onomatopoeia, which I thought was great. Paul Scheer as Ronald Cobblepot was fun to see. David Krumholtz as Fletcher Deming, the Egyptian king there. And then McKenna Grace and Haley Joel Osment, his brother and sister in that Nocturna Anton episode, was so much fun. And a host of other actors who were doing some good work here, as of some of the other minor characters, including my brother Yuri Lowenthal, who did a number of voices on this. So Shannon, your thoughts? Oh, and Lacey Chabert as Yvonne Frances in this. So your thoughts overall on the voice work and the performances done by these wonderful actors?
I mean, loved everybody. I mean, Diedrich Bader is the one that really stands out the most to me, just because he was of the supporting cast. He was probably in the most. But Diedrich Bader has a very showman quality to his voice, which I think really worked when he was Batman for Brave and the Bold, because that was a younger show. It was a broader show. He was able to use that same showmanship the way that an attorney would use. And like, you listen to Harvey Dent's, political speeches that he makes. Like, this is the type of guy that gets your attention. And also along with that, when you got to hear that transition to when he became Two-Face after he got the acid, he was able to kind of go to the depths of sort of this menace that I don't feel like we've ever heard from Diedrich Bader seriously. Like I think when you've watched some of his comedic work, when he goes to those darker places, it's always with a wink. Whereas this, I mean, this is a Harvey Dent who is not just physically harmed. I mean, he is severely mentally fractured at this point. And I think he really played the duality of that really well. Toby Stevens is another one. I loved that episode. The Gentleman Ghost episode is easily my favorite of the season. You have an English ghost who's robbing from the poor and giving to the rich. I mean, like that just checked all the boxes. But also in terms of story, getting to see him take Alfred over, and I think you get some more emotional work from Linklater in that, as he's saying, you know, I can't do this without you. I thought that worked really well, and Christina Ricci as well. I mean, she played such a great old school light Catwoman. Like she was so playful and she was so fun. Like she's definitely not to that Michelle Pfeiffer level where she's actually trying to wound Batman beyond recognition. Like this was a bored rich girl who's suddenly on her heels, having to undertake some tasks that she would have done for fun in the past. So I thought everyone stood out, especially Gary Anthony Williams as well. I mean, I loved what they did with Glass.
Yeah.
Just from his design, like they kind of leaned into like almost like a Dick Tracy vibe, how he's got this bright kind of turquoise bow tie suit, but also Gary Anthony Williams, very, very funny performer, but also really good actor. And I thought he and John DiMaggio really played off each other well as Flass and Bullock.
Yeah, I have to say, years and years ago, I did a stage play, The 8 Reindeer Monologues, and Gary Anthony Williams was one of the reindeer with me on stage. And way back then, you could tell the guy was an incredible talent. To see how far he's come and to see how he's blown up and the work he does both in front of the camera and behind the mic has just been phenomenal to witness. Such a fan and champion of his work. Michael, your thoughts on the voiceover work here being done by everybody? What stood out to you? Whose performances do you really want to highlight here?
I mean, Shannon really covered it well. It was great across the board. I mean, I don't think that there was a single voice where I was like, okay. Like they all nailed it. They were all great. And they all really sort of in little ways just doubled. Like it was stylistically, this felt like it was a period piece. And that was intentional in like, you know, the art design, the style, the music, everything about it. But the voices are a part of that as well. You know, I mean, I think standout, like Hamish Linklater is a standout. I remember when the first announcement was made and he sort of announced the voices, and John, you were kind of like, I don't know if this is the guy. And like, you know, Kevin Conroy will always be my Batman, more than any live action actor who's played Batman. Like when I hear Batman in my head, it's Kevin Conroy, but Hamish Linklater, not a bad spiritual sort of, passing of the torch. He really captured that same vibe, and arguably I might like Hamish Linklater's Bruce Wayne more than Kevin Conroy's Bruce Wayne.
Whoa.
There was it was a different choice. Kevin Conroy had a warmth to his Bruce Wayne when he talked that was very much the, oh, I'm putting on a friendly Bruce Wayne, that was fake, and then he'd be like, but I'm really Batman. Hamish Linklater definitely went into the Batman growl, but even when he was Bruce, there was a distance there that was intentional, and like as a guy who still hasn't fully warmed up to, I'm gonna play this persona this way, which I thought was really, really nice. Dan Donahue is Clayface.
Yeah.
You know, just really going for that that universal monster movie. Like it was just like, it was very, very just enjoyable. And yeah, to Shannon's point, I mean, to me, one of the standouts absolutely is Christina Ricci as Catwoman.
Yeah.
Just because, to his point, like I think that from Batman the Animated Series, from its inception, at that point in our Batman history, Michelle Pfeiffer's Selena Kyle had sort of overpowered all Selena Kyles.
Oh yeah, good point.
Like she had overpowered at that moment Eartha Kitt, Julie Newmar, like, and there was just like Selena Kyle's Catwoman was so iconic. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer's Selena Kyle was so iconic that Batman the Animated Series keyed off of that, and everyone had sort of this there was a sexual sort of danger that like that's kind of what defined Catwoman. So taking a step back and making Catwoman just this kind of bored socialite who was so inspired by Batman, like literally like, oh, he's got a cape, I'll have a cape. He's got a cool car that looks like a bat, I'll make a cool car that looks like a cat. He's got weapons, I'll have weapons. It was so just adorable and silly. But again, in the same way that the Harley Quinn departure, I think, really worked for them, doing this with Catwoman, it's a Catwoman that's so fresh because it's so classic.
Yeah.
It's like we haven't seen a simple Catwoman like this. Every Catwoman, even on Harley Quinn, is sort of a, oh, hey girls, I'm kind of badass and sexy. And so this was such a different vibe. So I think across the board, the voices were great, but those were a few that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, I thought the voices were really good. I have to say Hamish was good in some episodes, and then a couple episodes I wasn't 100% in on. But overall, got to say I enjoyed his work. Really, I hope I didn't take this off. I really liked a lot of the voiceover work that was done in here, and certainly Jason Watkins as Alfred. I thought his Alfred was really good throughout the whole series, and the certain moments when he's digging at Batman, and then Bruce rather, and then other moments when he's showing love for Bruce, and other moments when he's frustrated with the situation. And then that moment, as you mentioned, Shannon, when the galloping ghost gets inside of him and he's like, kill me before I kill you. I don't want to kill you, sir. Like that was emotional to see that. I thought that was really fun as well. I thought Jamie Chung did a nice job with Harley and Quinzel. I thought their connection was really strong. Michelle Bonilla did an excellent job with Renee Montoya. I like that as well. And Crystal Joy Brown, she was really good as Barbara. Like I just was so invested in Barbara and what she was doing. But Shannon, you brought up Diedrich Bader, almost unrecognizable in the voiceover work he did here as Harvey Dent. And Cedric, we already talked about Gary, so shout out to Gary Anthony Williams. But Cedric Yarborough, I thought as well, just that was really fantastic work. He was popping up doing other characters, but his Rupert Thorne was so strong and so just kind of the old school 1940s villain type thing, but without being a caricature, that I just was blown away by his work overall.
One thing I really thought about with this show, particularly by the time we got to the end, was, you know, obviously Batman, when you look at Batman's rogues gallery, it's impossible to like get past the Joker being his number one villain. And we'll talk about the ending of this season and that whole thing. But like the Joker is Batman's like main guy. But you can really make a case that Two-Face is a much more interesting and longer lasting. Like the Joker is almost an enigma in his origin and is such like a force of chaos, but Harvey Dent's story is so tragic, and it's just like there's just something about the Two-Face story that no matter how many times they retell it, it just sort of hits me whether it's like what they did here, what they did in Dark Knight. Like the Harvey Dent story is just a great horror monster tragedy that like he I think Two-Face could give Joker a run for his money as far as Batman's rogues gallery goes.
When you write him really well, I think you're 100% right, Michael, because of the connection with Bruce. It's such an element that the Joker doesn't have, an extra level, an extra layer here. If you tell the story that they're friends, that they were connected beforehand, I agree. And I do want to give one more shout out to Minnie Driver as Oswalda. I thought that episode, that might be my favorite episode of the season, which we'll get to in a second here. But like, I loved her performance as Oswalda, and having the two other guys, Paul Scheer and the other guy, be her sons was great. So to me, that was a lot of fun to see her work in there. And of course, Christina Ricci was great.
I don't know this for sure, but I'm willing to bet that the 10% of the Batman villains that Shannon didn't like this season are the Penguin.
Interesting. Well, I don't know. Okay, I don't know where that comes from, but okay. All right. Well, let's get into our favorite episodes here, because I know we only have a limited amount of time here. In Treacherous Waters, And Be a Villain, Kiss of the Catwoman, Night of the Hunters, Stress of Her Regard, Night Ride, Moving Target, Nocturne, The Killer Inside Me, Savage Night. Those were the episodes here. Nocturne, of course, shout out to McKenna Grace, who I think did a nice job as Nocturne as well. So Shannon, you already said Night Ride. So I'll go to Michael. What's your favorite episode, Michael, of the season, or what's some episodes you want to highlight? And then we'll swing back to Shannon on his.
I mean, The Gentleman Ghost is up there. Like that was not just for to which, I mean, Shannon loves anything that's a period piece. So somebody in period clothing that's a ghost running around is like Shannon sold. I really loved the Batman having a hard time with the supernatural.
Yeah.
Batman is a logical person. This is not real. This is something else. Oh, it is real. This is a ghost. How do I catch a ghost? Like it was like seeing this formative part of Batman's training as a hero, which I really liked. I think the Harley Quinn episode is up there as one of my favorites. I just wish we got more Harley Quinn. And the Clayface episode, just because the Lon Chaney of it all and the Universal movie monster, it just like the Clayface episode kind of gave me Universal monster movie, and it was where Renee Montoya really stepped up in a cool way, where I was like, oh, they're really going for it with Renee Montoya. But I mean, it's almost like it would be. I was gonna say it would be easier to pick my least favorite episode, but it's not. Like I thought Onomatopoeia was maybe the least interesting villain. I think there's a lot you could do with him, but I feel like what we got of him wasn't great. But having this whole shootout happen in this like suburban area that's under construction with everybody, and like it was so dynamic. Like there were very few episodes that I didn't enjoy. Like it was just a fun ride for me throughout.
Yeah, Shannon, we mentioned Night Ride, which Michael also liked. What other episodes that you enjoy, and anything you want to say more on Night Ride?
Night Ride definitely my favorite. I mean, and it's not close. I mean, along with my love of people in capes and ghosts, along with that, I do like and it's the same thing with Sherlock Holmes when he is presented with something that logically and scientifically doesn't make sense. Watching our hero have to adjust on the fly, and typically with Sherlock Holmes, he's right. Like it's not real, but in Batman's world, it is real. Like that, those creatures of the night do exist. With that, I think one of my favorite episodes was Nocturne with Natalia and Anton Knight. How in the comics, I guess she was vampire like. But in this, I mean, it's like she's kind of sucks out your essence, your soul. And the cameos of all of the Robins save one. So I'm wondering if Tim Drake is going to be our Robin.
Oh, good point.
If we get to that point, maybe Caped Crusader never gets to Robin. But I just love the tenderness that Batman also has when he sees that this is a kid who doesn't fully get what they're doing, a kid that did not mean to kill her brother. And the Clayface villain, what this show did really, really well was taking these larger than life elements and making them somewhat realistic. Batman, the animated series Clayface, I mean, he's the Hulk, essentially. He's the Hulk who can change. I love that that's not where this Clayface is. This is a Clayface who can change their appearance for a limited amount of time. And to Johnny's love of all things darker, this is the first one where we see like there's a body count. Like there were bodies underground with the spiders crawling over their cold dead eyes. I just loved I loved everything that they did. I keep hitting my mic, sorry. I just loved everything that they did with Clayface. So those three are definitely the ones that stand out to me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I thought Night of the Hunters with Firebug, I thought that was really good, just because of the idea of exploring Flass and Bullock as being these corrupt guys who are willing to stage this situation and sacrifice these lower income people who they see as less than human to them in order to advance their narrative and work against Montoya. And then having Gordon come in and go, this is where I came from. I know I work these streets rather, and I know where the escape is, and working with Batman and saving those kids. That to me, there's a lot of commentary there that I thought really appealed to me. Plus the scariness of him visualizing everything on fire and the joy he's to put us in the point of view of him as he's seeing this joyful thing, which is everybody on fire and everything on fire, was really unsettling. So I love that as an episode. The Harley Quinn episode I thought was a lot of fun as well. But to me, the killer inside me is the one that I really enjoy. Bruce trying to get Harvey out of it, but Harvey going to these to going out with him to the dinner and then hearing the voices, and no one is saying anything negative about him. And I think this was a like low-key commentary on mental health and on how people sometimes think, or paranoia, people think people are saying negative things about them because they take their voice or their inner voice and they put it on other people, and they misconstrue what people say or how people address them and think certain things. And so there's a bit of sympathy you develop for Harvey as he's tumbling into this place, that I thought was a nice thing to see in a show like this, to give us a new approach to Harvey Dent. So those are my episodes that I think stand out the most, along with the Oswalda Cobblepot one. And I thought the Catwoman one was a fun one too. You guys mentioned already the portrayal of Catwoman in this. It was nice to see her just having fun and fucking with people. And then at the end, having her maid played by the great, was it Leslie Hoffman? I think the actress who from the Murders, Only Murders in the Building, having her play her maid and turn on her at the end. Great twist. So yeah, there was a lot of fun, but I didn't have a least favorite episode, to be honest with you. I thought they were all really good.
I didn't either, but Shannon, you did.
Shannon, you had an issue? Please.
I was not a fan of what they did with the Penguin.
Really?
Why? Yeah. I don't have an issue with gender swapping, but it just felt arbitrary. They didn't really do anything with it outside of give Oswalda twin sons that we see she's willing to kill one of them.
That was awesome. Yeah.
I think Minnie Driver is a wonderful performer, but it felt like a change just to make a change. They didn't actually do anything with it. And her design as well, she just kind of reminded me of like Witch Hazel from the Huey, Dewey, and Louie Halloween cartoon from way back when. So that one, and to have the series start off with that, I was like, I don't know.
To me, this is I liked it. I thought it was a fun take on the Penguin. I do think that it would have been really better served if there had been a little bit more lead time. Because I think what's interesting about it, about the gender swap and about going Oswalda instead of Oswald, is she's a performer at the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah.
Yes, it's her lounge, but she's like the main act.
Yeah.
Like she's out there, she's performing, she's doing it. So she's even more unassuming. Like the Penguin being the guy that runs the Iceberg Lounge, which I'm relatively sure is a Batman the Animated Series choice that then got put into the comics. The Penguin being this guy who is running a mostly reputable business, but is really not reputable and everybody knows it, and he's kind of the wheeler dealer, is, I think, one of the most interesting things about the Penguin. And so Oswalda doing that, but also being the main act, makes her even more unassuming. And having her have sort of still an awkward build kind of makes it more interesting than if they made her like the sexy Penguin. But I think that, to your point, Shannon, part of this hinges on everybody thinks she's one thing, but by the end of the episode, she's been outed as this big villain and then she runs off. Had this been episode 6 and Oswalda and the Iceberg Lounge, this floating club, had been sort of a part of the series, and then she was revealed to be this cold-hearted bitch that killed her son, I think it would have had a better impact than being the first episode out of the gate. But I just think they had so many other stories they wanted to tell. I still really enjoyed it, but I think that's it's the switch that makes her the most interesting, and the switch happens so quickly because it's a half-hour episode and they're going to get to it. Hey,
you should run shows.
Although I have to say I disagree with Shannon. I love this. Thank God this was the first episode, because this one got me into it. I loved the approach. I loved the fact that she was this brassy bitch who was willing to sacrifice her fucking son, no problem. I thought that was awesome. I'm like, this is the tenor for me. The fact that you've got this kind of darkness right off the bat, I'm in on this series. Let's see more of what she's and the fight, and the fact that she fought through Batman to shoot that thing, to shoot that weapon, I thought was awesome as well. So, and the fact that she's a woman, everyone overlooked it. Even Flash and Bullock were like, no way she's in charge of things. No way she's the one doing it. Nobody wanted to believe a woman would be able to do that. and the way she did it, I thought worked really well. And giving her a chance to sing and do all the stuff that she was doing, like to me, this all worked so well. I got a soft spot for Minnie Driver since Circle of Friends. So I mean, I'm always gonna love what she's doing. So for me, this episode really got me on board with the series and made me feel like I was in the right hands to keep going. So I guess a different reaction than Shannon, but that's why art is subjective, I imagine. Okay.
The Clayface episode, because it was the second one, that is the one that got me invested.
Yeah, that was a good one, right? Yeah, for sure. If you watch those kinds of, as Michael mentioned, the Universal monster movies, it was a great kind of allusion to that. But also the idea of like, oh, I want more. I'm going to do this to get that. But when I do this, I'm going to lose everything else and become this madman. So yeah, I thought that was great as well. Well, we're close to 40 minutes, so we should wrap up our review here. Anything more you guys want to say about the series? Anything more you want to highlight? Any other negative stuff you want to bring up possibly?
We should talk about the Joker.
Yes, at the end. Yes, good call, Michael. So yes, go ahead. Joker at the end.
Really interested to see what they do with it. I mean, kind of to Shannon's point, what this show did. I wouldn't say that the characters are necessarily grounded, but they are more tied to reality than Batman the Animated Series, where they really went for the superhero of it all. And so, we've kind of seen like a more grounded Clayface, a Catwoman that is just this socialite having fun, a Harley Quinn who really is a therapist first, and that's what leads her to do her thing. So we've seen all these characters, and then then we see the journey of Two-Face and Harvey Dent, and then we get to the end and we see just based on the one line he says at the end with that really deep voice, and what we see a Joker that feels much more sort of serial killer-esque.
Yeah.
And so leading into this next batch of episodes for their season 2, really it feels like they're gearing up to have the Joker be a massive threat to Gotham, but in a very different way than we've ever seen the Joker before, which I'm very, very intrigued by. What the Joker treatment is for this version of Batman, I'm really like excited to see it, which is, we've seen so many versions of the Joker. To some people, too many. Some people feel like the Joker is overdone. So I'm glad they sort of saved him and didn't come out of the gate with him. But yeah, I'm actually really curious to see where they go with this and how dark they're willing to get.
Yeah. Shannon, your thoughts on the Joker reveal we got at the end here and what he had to say in that little sliver of light, just showing his eyes.
I mean, the Joker is always a threat, but how they leaned into like the classic Catwoman, like this doesn't seem like it's going to be
Cesar Romero.
Yeah, like not the Silver Age Joker where it's like he comes he comes out like a Jack in the Box. I mean, he seems much more. You look at how he's testing on people to see how this chemical works. And normally when we think of the Joker, like if you're going to give us just a little tease, you're going to hear the laugh, you're going to hear something, and that's not what you hear. You just hear this voice of like, okay, like just the fact that they went much more lower register with it. I think it's a really, really interesting choice, and based off of that one little visual that we got, there doesn't appear to be a smile on his face.
No.
There's a great Gotham Central is a great comic book series if you haven't read it. Just a great run that's really more focused on the cops of Gotham. Batman is almost a side character, and they tell some really, really amazing stories from like the cops' grounded perspective of what it's like being a cop in Gotham, where you have Batman running around and you have all these villains. And there's an arc where the Joker is loose in a department store, and the cops find out that the Joker is, basically at the mall and holding the entire mall hostage. And the way that they treat the Joker is so real, as far as like there's a psychopath in clown in the mall, and these kids and these people are going to die, that it was like one of the more terrifying versions. And in this little snippet that we got at the end, it sort of reminded me of that run of Gotham Central, where you're like, oh yeah, we kind of, to Shannon's point, we think of the Joker as, oh, it's Mark Hamill, it's fun, oh, he's mean to Harley Quinn, he's an abusive boyfriend. You're like, oh no, when you really go through and do the Joker the way the Joker, you're like, this is horrifying.
Yeah. I wonder, I tried to find who was voicing him as a kind of clue, but I don't see anything, because it's obviously not going to be Mark Hamill. So I don't know who they're going to get to voice him, but it's a darker kind of reminiscent of John DiMaggio and Under the Red Hood, having that kind of darkness to the sound of the voice.
I think it was Robert Downey Jr.
Why not? Why not? Why do you hate me? Why do you hate me, Shannon? I don't understand. All right. Anyway, any other final words on this series as we wrap up here our spoiler review?
It was a joy. Felt like a kid again.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a bummer that we're not going to get the second season for quite a while.
I think the greatest thing you can say about a series, especially when it evokes a great classic series like the animated series, is it makes you want to go back and watch some episodes from Batman, the animated series. And as soon as it was over, when I finished watching it the other night, I was like, oh, I want to go watch some episodes and have some fun. So that is accomplished its mission. And these episodes are rewatchable as hell. They're so good and so well written. I think it's a fantastic series overall, and I was glad to watch it. And you guys know I'm not as into animation as these two are, but if it got me, I think that says volumes about how good of a show it was.
I think 9 of them are really rewatchable.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining us for this spoiler review of Batman the Caped Crusader. We appreciate it, and especially appreciate all of you who asked us, who were asking us over the last week to review it. We finally did review it, so thank you very much for that. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. You want to tell me I'm wrong about my opinion on the Penguin? You can follow me on Twitter at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to follow Mr. Vogel and tell him how he's right about everything, it's at NKToon. If you'd like to follow Mr. Rocha and say, where did you get Galloping Ghost from? At The Rocha Says.
It came right in my head. I'm like, oh shit, that's wrong. I know that's wrong. It's the Gentleman Ghost. I know that's wrong. I did like his line when he's like, what did he say? He's like, oh, you do good fisticuffs for a man of breeding. Next time though, I'll really get you.
The second Shannon hears the word fisticuffs, he's in.
Queensberry rules.
Queensberry rules. Michael, please.
Please smash the like button below, despite Shannon's ridiculousness. Subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page. Check out the amazing content he's got there. Leave your comments below. What did you think of the episodes? What did you think of the Penguin? And what did you think of why Shannon hates large women? Like, let's just talk about it. Let us know in the comments below. If you're listening to us on a podcast, leave us some stars and some comments so we go up in the rankings. And as always, the best thing you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. Thank you all so much. And just a quick reminder, we did record our live episode of D23, broke down all the big things going on. So if you missed that, it's up there for you to listen to on our podcast feed or to watch here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new Geek Bite brought to you by the
Geek
Buddies.
Hey!